As I was saying, hello.
Yeah.
But as I was saying, I don't have to worry. Everyone in my family, every person on both sides has croaked fully on their deathbeds with a lush, full head of hair. So I don't think that's in my future.
Really? Doesn't your dad have like some thinning hair?
My dad's hair is thinning slightly, but not.
But everyone does. Once you,
like
if you're
fully balding.
Yeah, it's like if you're like. You can get that kind of like Mitt Romney, just kind of nice recession, but it's like, it looks classy.
Yeah. It's like, my dad's hair is a little wispy, but it's not like...
Okay.
I'm done with, I'm over with. And
you're going to just be fully bald at 43?
Yeah, but something like that probably, I think. So I'm trying to just be like, this is like the kind of first thing mortality index out of your control. And I'm not trying to like scream and cry about it. So I'm not trying to apply fucking shit to my head for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I'm screaming and crying about it. My teeth are. I do the white strips, and if I ever go bald, I'm getting beard implants to give full beard so I can look.
Did you guys ever see the show
dude,
Vice?
I'm gonna do it.
You're gonna get pubes in your hair headline.
They take them off the back of your head and like make follicles in your face.
God,
I've seen videos of it.
It is fucking impressive what we're capable of doing these days.
It's advanced.
Yeah. I'm like, here's my thing with science. Let me just say this.
Science as a whole?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Like, let's stop devoting time and energy to figuring out how to transplant pubic hair into your face and, like, just make it so we don't die anymore. Like, someone start working on that. Like, if every single person who was working on, like, dumb cosmetic anti-aging shit spent all of their time and energy figuring out how to actually fucking stop us from aging and perishing, like, how have we not figured this out yet? Or even at least work on, like, how we can eat and drink whatever we want and not get fat or unhealthy. Like, how have we not... I'm being serious. How have we not made any progress on those problems, like, as far as I know, like, at all? What the fuck?
I feel like Google is, like, they got the Human Senescence Project, right? Is that something...
I don't know what that is.
I feel like the people at the forefront are the people you'd least like to be at the forefront.
Listen, if I don't care where it comes from, if someone figures out that I can just... survive on beer and mozzarella sticks. I don't care who it is. I don't care who it is or where they come from. That I will be very happy with that person. It just seems like a solvable issue. What the fuck?
I think I've read some. I don't know, like some.
They're slacking.
It feels like they're slacking. Fuck all this. Fuck all this space shit. Fuck all this machine learning shit.
True.
I want you to figure out. Make a pill that I can take once a week or once a day or whatever the fuck that hypercharges all of my organs and whatever the fuck, fat burn, whatever the fuck needs to happen. Sugar conversion. I don't fucking know. I don't. This is why I'm not
powered up. Get in there.
Literally. This is why I'm not going to be the person to do it. But whatever the fuck needs to happen, make it liver function. Make it fucking happen. Come on.
I know. They already treat us like in the medical field as though we are faulty cars. You know what I mean? So there's no romance there. It's not like, the temple of the body. It's like, no, they're there. They're like, there's like 12 different ways to deal with a standard procedure because it's just like fucking whatever, it's like dealer's choice. And it's like, yeah, it's pretty, I don't know, mechanical in a sense.
Maybe maybe I just don't know enough about it. I'm sure I'm.
You don't.
I was
And
gonna
neither
say-
do I, but
I was going to retract and say I certainly don't know enough about it.
Maybe I don't know enough about science.
Yeah,
But-
I mean, you
but
don't know
like-
shit, neither do I.
But like making progress on like anti-aging stuff seems to me to be like just intuitively more doable
The
than
best
like
science idea.
going to space even in the first place. Like let
It
alone,
can't be, or there wouldn't be
let
these-
alone all these other crazy shit these people are doing with fucking like deep AI and shit like that. Like also what regardless of the complication, like the
Gabe's afraid of
complexity of the question, it just seems more important of a question. Something that would be more like just do that instead of the deep AI machine learning or whatever.
I think the dodge is the real, it's that it's impossible.
That is just too hard.
And then
Well,
so they're just like, look at the, they're jiggling their left hand to make you ignore the right.
Well,
I think that
that's
if we solved cancer, that would probably translate
that would
well
be
to
a
like
great-
cell decay.
That would be a great first
It would
start.
probably
And
be
of
like-
course, I
maybe
know
it'd be
lot
a
of
double
people
whammy.
I know that's something people are working hard on, but
Yeah.
who is out there working hard on the drink beer and have nothing bad happen problem?
There's people out here suffering because of how much beer they drink. And they still want to like six pack and to live for the normal length of time.
Longer. Extending it longer.
Yeah, 112-year-old chronic alcoholic, please.
But make it not even matter. That's the point.
Yeah, you can
Right.
live to be infinite 500 years old plus, right?
And
And you
just-
look like a 25-year-old.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. It seems
Just
not that
drinking
difficult.
beer, just walking
make
around
it
stumbling
happen.
drunk. 500 years from now.
You look like a TikTok star. You're 78. You look like a TikTok star. You're drunk.
You cannot look me in the eye. You cannot look me in the eye and tell me that would not be a doper scientific discovery than anything having to do with AI.
Of course, and anyone who did would be a filthy rich genius person.
That's the other thing. It's like these people want money. This is you want.
Live forever. Make me live forever.
These
me your
motherfuckers
money.
trying to get paid.
Like if you want fucking money,
Do
like,
something
dude,
dope.
Come on. So I'm putting my foot down. This is the official Spine Crackers podcast call out to Silicon Valley. Elon, Peter Thiel, the dude that Nick Offerman played in Devs, all of you people who are doing this shit, focus on making us not be able to do whatever we want and not get fat and die. That. Come on,
Get it together.
get it together.
Okay.
No one gives a shit that your robot has feelings. No one fucking cares.
Right, and is
I
Grimes
care
in a
that
costume.
I have feelings and I want. Yeah, exactly. My feeling that I, as an existing person, have is that I want to be able to eat and drink and do whatever I want with, and might be
Impunity.
Yeah,
Zero
exactly.
consequences to
Yeah.
your health.
Yeah. What's so bad about
Yeah.
that? What's so bad
No,
about
it's
that?
I mean,
Nothing.
it's just a fantasy. It's never going to happen.
Yeah.
Well,
There we
maybe
go.
if some of
You're
these-
gonna die in pain.
Maybe if some of
You're
these
gonna die
people
in pain.
fucking reprioritized this bullshit that they're working on.
You might die like my grandfather, who was a millionaire at one point, wasted all his money, and died in a trailer in a diaper,
Yeah, well,
shitting.
if I had $1 million to
himself.
waste, I would.
My grandfather was in a similar situation. Did everything right on paper. Fucking perfect citizen.
That's why I want to drink beer all the time. Who cares? You can do everything right on paper and fucking, get shot by a stray bullet tomorrow.
That's true.
Well, see, you know who would have loved the sort of substance abuse, zero consequence discovery would be Truman Capote.
Yeah,
that is
indeed.
true.
He would have benefited from it immensely.
Immensely,
also.
as a alcoholic and tranquilizer abuser.
Yes.
Yeah,
Before
some
even
scientists out
lewds, I don't know
there
what he was doing, but he was doing tranks of some kind.
Just fix overdoses too. No overdoses.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Live forever.
Oh, look, did Capote ever meet Fitzgerald?
I have no idea. I don't know.
I can't remember when Fitzgerald died and when Capote was kind of popping.
So, Capote was popping in so I think In Cold
The
Blood came
40s?
out in 48.
Yeah.
And then he obviously that was kind of like that's his most well-known book. That's the book that most people know when they hear the name Truman Capote, and Breakfast at Tiffany's also, but I think In Cold Blood is probably the bigger one particularly amongst like literary people. But I think that came out in 48, and then after that it was just whoop, off to the races.
But he had like that thing, like that Fitzgerald experience. I mean, whatever. This was like it felt like a common thread amongst, like, first of all, the fact that you could become a literary celebrity.
I'm fucking tripping, dude. I was way off. In Cold Blood came out in 1966.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Like with the stories we're reading,
48. These are all way earlier. Yeah.
These are like these are 47.
this is how he started, and then so he was at it for a long time. But the idea
he was at it when he was like a teenager, like an 8-year-old. I read that in 2015. Then I think the New York Times published like very, very early on, like teenage short stories.
Oh, really?
He was like a wunderkind, kind of like precocious.
Yeah.
Interesting. But like
talented.
He became part of the kind of this is what always fascinates me is like the late 40s, 50s to the 60s, like. So yeah, he's probably a generation younger than Fitzgerald, I suppose. But
you mean older?
Well,
like okay, wait, yeah, like a later, yeah,
right, yeah, younger. He's a younger person.
Right.
But you know, I got a similar vibe off of his bio of like he's writing these stories and he's been put in this kind of Southern Gothic genre category, which had, you know, also just recently been kind of coming to prominence. But he was just the idea of being like a lit celeb who gets to like drink and meet movie stars and like develop a tranquilizer problem amongst the intelligentsia of New York and whatever is so strange to me. Like, Franzen is not, you know, doing that shit with Tom Cruise or whatever. You know, it's just such a different environment.
Well, I mean, and Truman Capote in the same year In Cold Blood came out, like he had this legendary fucking party, right? The black and white ball or whatever, masked ball, and like it was like literally the social event of the century, like in Manhattan, like social circles, and that I think is just not really.
But he was like childhood friends with like Harper Lee, and like he was like close to like Humphrey Bogart, like, you know what I mean? Like he was all over.
Was he close with that? Who's that like 60s painter in New York City that did like the colorful Marilyn Monroe? Like,
Warhol?
Yeah, was the. I always picture him being.
Did you just forget Andy Warhol?
Dude, you know my recall. I can't take a shit.
Don't shame me, man.
I was literally looking up, like, I just typed in 60s visual artist trying to find his name.
Too vague. Soup cans, dude.
Great.
I don't think so. I think that's like just right after Capote, basically.
Okay.
Because Capote got a late start in sort of his national fame, I suppose. He was probably some sort of like intelligentsia, eccentric kind of like local celebrity. But yeah, I because like In Cold Blood, right? Like, has anyone read it? No one's read it, right?
I have not read it.
No, this is my first Capote.
Same.
Ever.
I did see the movie.
Right. We've all seen In Cold Blood. We've all seen.
I haven't seen it actually.
Oh, you love Philip Seymour Hoffman. You'd like it.
Yeah, I think I would.
We all know that the two movies that came out about Truman Capote in a weirdly short span of time.
Well, and also, of course, there's Breakfast at Tiffany's, which was a much older movie, but also based off of a Capote story.
Yeah.
Novella, I guess.
Yeah.
And the song.
Then I said, what about that? Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's floating around there. I actually don't know when Breakfast at Tiffany's was published.
I don't know when it was published. The movie was like 60 or 61, I think, but I don't know when the actual story came out. 61 was the movie, and the 58 was the novella.
So he's been cutting his teeth for probably 20 years before he really,
Oh, definitely.
like, burst onto, like, the full public consciousness, like, the actual, like, where he's, like, on the Dick Van Dyke Show and, like, you know, like, he's actually a celebrity.
One of the reasons that I think that partially played into the, I was reading about this a little bit. He made Matt, it may be in our introduction, our edition, he mentions in the introduction, whoever wrote the introduction, his name is escaping me at the moment, Reynolds Price, who I think is a novelist in and of his own right.
Oh yeah, to clarify, Gabe and I are reading the complete stories of Truman Capote, and Paul, what's the name of the version you're reading?
It's just A Tree of Night, and it doesn't even say. I don't have the paper on the whatever, so I don't know if like the actual cover said it, but it just says A Tree of Night.
Yeah, Tree of Night and Other Stories is the collection we're reading, which
I have like the first edition.
Do you really?
Really?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
How much did you pay for it?
I got it at Owl Pen, remember? And it was
Owl Pen, dude.
Yeah.
R.I.P. Rest in pen, dude.
Yeah, it says copyright 1945, first printing.
No, yeah, that is the first edition.
Yeah.
That's nice, man.
I know,
That's
it smells
pretty
great.
sweet. But that collection was obviously collected and released in Capote's lifetime, but this is the more recent full collection of all of his short fiction. But I was reading a little bit, and I forget if he mentions this in the introduction, or if I was reading this elsewhere, but like Capote kind of like, it was kind of actually not necessarily what you were saying, Matt, as him being like kind of like a hipster, like intellectual author or whatever, because most of his writing, and I guess this was kind of like the Price, I think, makes the point or makes the argument that like this was just the case for pretty much like all good writing at the time, is that it appears it was published in like serial form, basically in like women's home magazines.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so like he had like an audience, quote, of women who were reading these stories and some of these novellas and stuff published serially in these magazines. And then when In Cold Blood hit, there was already like kind of this base of an audience that he had, and then it kind of just blew up from there.
Which, this is not what we're covering. We're covering The Tree of Night and Other Stories. But In Cold Blood was a genre innovation of sorts, or it was like kind of one of the first like mainstream instances of like a factual account being fictionalized,
right?
Something like that.
Yeah, because it's based on some real murders,
right?
And Capote kind of novelized the facts of the murders, and I guess again, we don't have to get too deep into it, but I guess was like deeply personally involved in it, to the point that he like may have even like paid some attorney's fees for one of the killers or something.
Whoa.
I read that somewhere.
He was deep into it, if I remember the movie.
Yeah.
With Philip Seymour Hoffman that I watched.
Shout out. Anyway. So the collection that we're reading tonight, it's got 8 stories in it. Right? I think it's 8 stories.
Yep.
Yeah. So Paul, this was your pick 20 minutes into the episode.
Yeah.
Why'd you pick this book? And what's it about? That's not really applicable because it's a bunch of different things. But was there anything thematic maybe that you thought tied it together? Why'd you pick it, and what was your kind of initial impressions maybe?
Well, yeah, I picked it. Matt and I were at this really cool bookstore kind of by me called Owl Pen Books. Shout outs. Look it up. Go there someday. It's awesome. They're changing owners, but I think there's still going to be a bookstore, and they're just like in the middle of the woods and cool. And I just came across this book, and I was like, Truman Capote. Never read him before, and I picked it up, and I was like, this is going to be on the podcast. This seems like a good fitting thing. But yeah, when I looked it up, I basically realized it's in his top 5 or 4 most well-known works, like this collection. Tree of Night and Other Stories. They're really early on. Like they include one story, Miriam, which is like his first published work.
And that one I think was kind of a big one at the time. Like there was like a made for TV movie or something made of that as well, or something. It was adapted in some way. So that one kind of arguably was his first, put him on the map, I suppose.
Okay, that's probably my favorite one in the book too. Actually,
I liked it.
But yeah, I mean, there's 8 stories, and they're kind of, how would I describe them? They're kind of dark. They're all pretty much dark stories about, characters that are kind of living a mundane existence, I would say, that in a lot of the stories have tragic endings. But there's also a lot of like almost horror, like surreal elements that I was kind of caught off guard by. I didn't know. I mean, the very few things I've heard about Capote, that was never mentioned to me. But it makes sense because in Cold Blood and Breakfast at Tiffany's, from what I understand, do not have any of that kind of elements in them. So, yeah, it was kind of like it was a fun read for me. And Gabe, you mentioned that it almost gave you some Murakami vibes. Like last week you told me that, which I kind of agree with. I mean, yeah, we'll probably get into the more surreal, borderline magical realist elements, but...
Yeah. I mean, I just wanted to echo what you had said, which is that I, going in not really knowing what to expect. I talked about this on a video that I did for patrons only. Join the Patreon, Spinecrackers, patreon.com/Spinecrackers, where I review some of the other stories in this book that we're not going to talk about tonight, for patrons only on Patreon, so do that. This was not at all what I was expecting. I didn't really know what I was expecting. And I didn't really have much justification for like expecting anything specific, but it definitely was kind of out of left field for me. And I think maybe part of that is just my the little knowledge that I have about Capote as a public persona, and he was kind of very like boisterous and out there and fucking partying and all of that stuff. He was a openly gay man at the time. And in his sort of like when he was in the public eye, and so he did a ton of interviews and made TV appearances, and he, and I've seen a few of those interviews over the years, but yeah, definitely not necessarily what I was expecting going in. I don't know what you thought, Matt.
Yeah, I'd also not just a name, essentially, like in Cold Blood, like I said, I'd seen both. Weirdly, soon after each other, films in the early aughts about him, and then I'd seen Breakfast at Tiffany's like a while back. But
is the other one just called Capote? The other movie?
Yeah, but there's
Philip Seymour Hoffman. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, but there's another one with a British actor who plays him.
Okay.
Sir Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah. I've been knighted. I'm so fucked up. I'm fucked up, dude.
That line was fucking bitten from Neon Genesis, dude. Don't even get me started.
Is it really?
No.
It's bitten. That line is bitten from Neon Genesis.
Well, you can develop that argument in a second. I'm just going to say... Yeah, I honestly, because of In Cold Blood being the most prominent title in my head, I was expecting a sort of continuation of that, which I guess was actually a turn from the kind of Southern Gothic that he was working in and identified with prior, where I was like, okay, I was expecting a kind of pseudo journalistic approach to everything. I was thinking about The Journalist and the Murderer with Janet Malcolm, the same thing that actually only occurred once in his career, which was this somewhat problematic involvement with these figures in this tragedy, and he's potentially just using them to tell a sort of lurid tale. and invite a lot of questions about ethical confidentiality within the writing and journalist sort of framework. But that's not at all what these short stories are. They're like way more like weird and very like more like pseudo-Freudian kind of like psychological gothic-y things, and they like take place in New York mostly.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing I thought was interesting is that a lot of them take place in New York, but then a number of them also take place in
Louisiana,
the South, generally.
Yeah.
Sometimes specified. Sometimes I felt like not particularly specified exactly where they were taking place, which I think speaks to that, like you were saying, Matt, the kind of like Gothic / Southern Gothic, which of course was hot at the time, and there was been a lot of ink spilled about Capote and his debts to people like, you know, Faulkner or Flannery O'Connor or whatever, all of which he denied fervently because he was insulted by basically saying anyone had ever influenced him, which is hilarious.
It's parochial. Yeah. He had a funny voice too. Everyone knows this, but he had a funny voice.
Of course.
Yeah. Might as well just put that on the table.
He had a funny voice.
I'm glad I didn't read the book in that voice. I was a little afraid I was going to.
That would have been exhausting, but also like maybe kind of funny.
He sounds like Mike Tyson.
He does kind of sound like Mike Tyson. Yes. So how do you guys want to do this? Do we want to go story by story? Do we want to talk like big themes? Okay.
I don't think there's like
save that for the end.
Okay, can I just say like we've done not too many, but a couple short stories, like collections.
I think this might only be our second.
I think my choice was the other one, the Soul of Wood. And I will say it is a little tough because like I don't know, if you make a good short story, in my opinion, it's like a kind of world unto itself. And then if you read something like 8, like we did here, or I think there was a similar number for Soul of Wood, it's like if you're writing good short stories, you need to contend with them seriously, individually. And so if you read a slew of them and then need to discuss them, it's like you just have to shift your mindset for each discussed thing. And maybe there is a through line that can make that easier, but like it's definitely like, okay, are we done? Okay, next story.
Well, and also just in just us, we could probably talk about each of these individually for a half hour to 40 minutes each.
So we gotta try
so that would be
to.
like a 6-hour episode. So we're gonna have to endeavor to avoid that.
So let's begin. Let's go by.
Let's go in Paul's order.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Sick, because I got the first.
So I don't know what the order is in that original collection there, Paul.
Yeah, you tell us the title.
Handwrote this book himself.
First edition. That's a rule. First editions are handwritten by the author. Always.
The first one is Master Misery.
Okay, that's interesting because that's the last
story.
ours.
Yeah.
What's your first story?
Jug of Silver.
Okay, my last story is A Tree of Night.
Okay, so this will be interesting to talk about because I read this last, and I felt like I found some through lines throughout the various stories, and this one kind of like didn't necessarily bring them all together, but it was exemplary of a number of them.
Well, first of all, the shitty life of someone living in New York, even in 1948 or whenever, still sucked to live there.
Yeah, it always did.
Definitely some poignant critiques of city life from the main character. What's her name? Sylvia.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I forget where she comes from, but she's a recent
Easton
transplant.
But I don't know where like that is specifically.
Presumably somewhere, south, I think.
Yeah, it was like Missouri.
Yeah,
I don't know. It was that story felt. Mr. Misery, right? Is this Dr. Everston or something like that? Who is?
I don't know if he's a doctor. He's some kind of like old convalescent like rich guy.
Yeah.
Who? Well, maybe we should. I don't know.
He buys dreams.
Yeah.
He buys people's dreams for a sliding scale price depending on like
how
his
sick they are.
subjective, seemingly valuation of them merits.
And I think importantly, we don't really know what that means, right? Like,
right.
We know that there's someone who, one of his assistants who's with him during these like sessions, who's transcribing or taking notes at least on the dream. But like, it's also, and this is where
is it Miss Caesar?
It might be. Is it? I forget his assistant's name.
Mozart.
Miss Mozart.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's Master Misery and Miss Mozart. And I this is where for me some of the magical realist stuff starts to emerge, in the sense that like obviously this could just be he's paying people to tell them about their dreams and he's having someone write them down and he keeps them in this big file cabinet, right? But I felt pretty strongly that it was also like implied, if not narratively, at least thematically, that there was something like sort of spookier going on, and I don't know if you all got that sense or not.
Of course.
Oh yeah.
Vampirism.
That's what you thought?
Yeah. What, did you think something different?
No, I didn't pick up on that. I just thought there was something unnameable that was surrounding me during the story. I didn't pick up on the vampirism.
Well, I just mean like
like an actual Nosferatu character.
Well,
yeah, kind of. But for dreams.
I figured it was sort of like he was kind of a stand-in cynically for like a therapist.
Okay.
And he was doing the sort of Freudian interpretation of dreams thing where...
Because there is like a waiting room with other like quote unquote like patients and stuff, and they're all, you know, in various degrees of kind of down and out and or neurotic.
Yeah. And like, I guess the inverse is that she technically makes money by selling them, which would be the opposite of like a therapeutic relationship, but at the same time, I detected some sort of like a critique of popular Freudian shit, which was probably definitely going on in the late 40s.
Yeah. I agree.
I was thinking more just like general consumerism, I guess, which I guess is relevant to your point too. It's just like a different form of it, or a capitalist system of some kind. But I was actually thinking of that movie where they erase your memories with Jim Carrey. I can't think.
Oh, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Yes, I was thinking of that a little bit, just like a kind of a weird clinical place you go to have something very surreal happen to you.
Right, and something like you're like, I want this dealt with, and then after a time you're like, no, never mind. Like I'm actually losing something of myself by desiring a remedy for this.
Which I think Matt sort of supports a little bit, the kind of like vampirism angle, because Sylvia, of course, like a couple times in the story after this, she starts like regretting selling the dreams. She like feels loss, and her life kind of gets like measurably worse after this. Like she's sort of decaying in a way. She moves into this one bedroom, like not even a one bedroom, like a studio apartment, and she just like lets it go to shit, and her friends are like worried about her.
But she used to live with her friends who were like, the other thing is like kind of why she went in the first place. It's like she lived with like a happily married couple.
What's her friend's name? Estelle, I think.
Estelle, and I don't know the dude's name, Nathan or
I don't remember. He's not really a character in the story.
Yeah, his name's Bootsy. His pet name is Bootsy.
Right.
And she's like, you just need to get married. Like when I you know, I can't tell you how wonderful it is to feel the secure arms of Bootsy around me every night as I go to bed. And I love him, and he's just he's such a good would-be lawyer as he's like studying in Columbia Law.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of these stories are pretty funny. Like they feel like, because like how old would Capote have been if he's writing throughout the latter half of the 40s.
late 20s, early 30s,
Early
maybe?
30s.
Yeah.
You can feel that perspective, which once again is nothing new under the sun with that. Like, very like he's got a very sharp eye, and the kind of stuff that eats at you and the concerns you have are the same. It's like people in relationships probably are starting to establish, and like if you're
my
not,
annoying already married friend.
yeah, if you're not, it's like it's this thing that kind of looms large, and if you live with that, yeah, my fucking cute married couple that are always so like they're doing PDA, and
Yes.
I hate them, and I have nothing.
And so
Saw
I'm
my
gonna
dreams.
engage in some like self-destructive behavior.
Right, yeah.
And then of course like she winds up in
Meeting
like
an
this like
alcoholic.
pseudo relationship with this other, you know, patient / client or whatever of Master Miseries, who what's his name, O'Reilly,
Yeah. He's Irish.
who's just
Obviously.
who's just a straight alcoholic, and but has I guess a charm about him, and they go down this kind of self-destructive rabbit hole of a relationship together, and he's arrested maybe, and then sort of shows up inexplicably at her place, and they have like this weekend long party together, and she's like happy again, and then at the end of the story she wants to try to go back and get her dreams back from
Mr. Misery.
what's his real name in the story?
Something Netherland or
It's I think there's a V in there, but I know Revercombe.
okay.
Mr. Revercombe.
It's like AF Revercombe.
AF
or something
Revercombe.
like that.
Yeah. And she can't get him back because he says he's used them all up already. So I think this, like, again, that's where it's like, what the fuck does that mean? Like, in terms of realistically in the story, it's a sort of this element, like I've been saying, of kind of like this surreal kind of, I guess, magical realism. It reminded me of just on the vampirism thing. I have to say this because it popped in my head. Did any of you guys read fucking Bruce Coville books when you were younger? Anyone know who that is? Okay, Bruce Coville was this dude who had all these collections. He was kind of like an R.L. Stein like type character.
Okay.
But he did like short story collections that were not his own, like, but with a bunch of other people that would contribute stories. And one of them that stuck in my head for so many years after I read it, when I was probably like 12 or something or whatever, it was the story's like 4 lines. And it's just like someone picks up the phone one day. I forget what the title was, but it was something hinting at like vampirism and immortality or something. And someone picks up the phone, they're like, hello. And the person on the other end of the phone just goes, hey, how are you? Can I just have a minute of your time? And the person's like, yeah, sure. And then they're like, thank you, and hang up the phone. And then the person's like, they just felt a little bit older when they hung up the phone.
I love that.
Yeah.
It'll scare you when you're a 5-year-old.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, that popped in my head because there's a similar vibe going on here with Mr. Revercombe in terms of his like emotional kind of / spiritual vampirism.
Yeah, it's like what they do in the Shadows. There's like the emotional vampire. There's all these different types of vampires, and then there's like the time vampire, and it's like just a very boring guy. It's like who like just
Right.
says dumb shit. Everyone's like, "Oh my god, I can't get those minutes back." It also just felt like maybe more crudely as just like a kind of like the American dream is for sale at the moment.
Yes.
Basically, like by the cusp of the 50s. It's just like...
And I think that theme of the American dream in general, not necessarily specifically being for sale, but being sold and consumed, like Paul was saying, that's on display in a couple other stories, I think, too. One specifically.
Yeah. Is that what you're going to say by when you said you finished this as your last story, that you had kind of like, this gave you vibes for the themes of the rest of the stories?
That was one of the themes, yeah, that I thought was appearing here. And the other one is that, a lot of these stories, as we'll see, kind of revolve around like people in or freshly out of or sort of in like very toxic, self-destructive relationships.
Yeah.
And like their own kind of inability to like be a person, basically.
Yeah.
And I think that comes through in Sylvia for sure.
But I do like the element of like, there's that questionable element of like, why can't she be a person? Is because her dreams are being sucked out. And I mean, I think it can relate to like going to a therapist and just like having this repetitive relationship with someone who's not really potentially helping you. I guess that could be the theme. That is kind of makes sense to me.
And Sylvia, I think, is pretty kind of a pretty dark character. She's pretty like cynical, and Capote for me. I'll put a few cards on the table here. Is very hit or miss when he like waxes like a little philosophical, in terms of or like in terms of the this kind of symbolism that he puts in and so on and so forth. But this section that I thought was really emblematic of the way a lot of these characters kind of think. That we're going to talk about tonight. This is on, I don't know if you have the same pages as me, Matt, but this is on 171 in the collected edition, towards the end of the story. This is after O'Reilly's been arrested, and she's kind of like, alone in her room, just kind of saying fuck the world, basically. Turning on the radio as loud as it would go, she dragged a chair up to the window and opened the newspaper on her lap. Lena denies, Russia rejects, miners conciliate. Of all things, this was the saddest, that life goes on. If no one leaves one's lover, life should stop for him, and if one disappears from the world, then the world should stop too, and it never did. And that was the real reason for most people getting up in the morning, not because it would matter, but because it wouldn't. And I think that kind of like, I don't know if you want to call it angst or whatever, but that sort of just general kind of existential attitude is on display in a lot of these stories and these characters.
Yeah, well, it's like the 30-year-old angst, right? It's not exactly like the teenage angst.
Nothing we would know anything about.
No. I didn't listen to the song Constantine over and over again when I was 18.
or yesterday.
I'm just going to read this chunk, too. It's the end of Sylvia. It's just like, it did not matter that it was the last of her money, that now she would have to walk home and alone. The pilings of snow were the white waves of a white sea, and she rode upon them, carried by winds and tides of the moon. I do not know what I want, and perhaps I shall never know, but my only wish from every star will always be another star. And truly I am not afraid, she thought. 2 boys came out of a bar and stared at her. In some park some long time ago she'd seen 2 boys, and they might be the same. Truly, I am not afraid, she thought, hearing their snowy footsteps following after her. And anyways, there was nothing left to steal. Yeah, that's a dark sentiment, and I do think that kind of permeates the whole collection of 8 that we read. Is angst for sure,
and that sense of just being lost, right, and not knowing what to do with yourself, or why you are the way you are. Because I think like one of the other things that happens in a lot of these stories is that the characters are like going through this, like they go through something, whether it's a relationship or this thing with the dream guy or whatever, and then they come out at the end with essentially zero additional clarity in most cases.
Yeah, they're just like, fuck. Like, that was bad, and it was confusing, and it didn't enlighten me in any way.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say. Go ahead.
I was going to say, like, most of the stories felt to me like an exercise in misery. I guess I would say.
Yeah.
Just like exploring various miserable ideas and characters.
Yeah, I don't know what the span of years we read. It was not long, maybe 3.
I think like 3, maybe 4 years.
My edition says 47 to 49.
Yeah.
Let me
Okay.
Actually, it might be 45.
45. Jug of Silver is
45
45
to 49.
Yeah.
So this was actually must have been published then in 49, but it's still first edition.
It's a good snag.
It's a 5-bagger.
5-snagger. It's a yeah. It's less like if you're trying to not engage with that mindset, which is, I think, interestingly enough, a mindset that even back in the 40s and 50s doesn't feel dissimilar to the contemporary mindset of people around the same age range. I think that's important just in and of itself to kind of encounter and grok and see. But other than that, I would say Capote's sort of strength is more descriptive of the sort of experience of that, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. His turns of phrase are so funny and good. I have one just highlighted, just by example. It was yet the house was warm, even somewhat overheated, but cold, and Sylvia shivered, but cold, like the snowy, swollen wastes of the secretary's face. Yeah. And I just like that kind of thing pops up everywhere. It's just like this unexpected simile, or no. Right? Is that what it is? A simile?
Yeah, simile. Yeah, the like gives it away. If I remember anything about seventh grade English.
Yeah. Well, okay, chill.
No, that wasn't a dig.
We gotta shake the rust off of our poetry terms.
Oh God, I'm nervous about that episode.
We are reviewing poetry at some point.
Which is a spoiler alert for a question we got for a Q&A session for our anniversary episode, which is coming up next week. So be on the lookout for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, his turns of phrase are his strength, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I think even in that passage you just read and that passage you read at the end about the pilings of snow, the White Sea, and her riding on it, everything becomes so. The overwhelming sense that I got through these stories is of a sense of internal life and reality being very just muddled in pastel paintings on a blank canvas, just kind of finger painted, messed together. Everything is very muddled and blurry, and you can lose track very quickly of when you're awake versus when you're dreaming versus when you're awake but something fucking weird is happening. All and all of those things kind of run together in a way that I think Matt was generally pretty effective.
Which is something I was not expecting while reading this at all. I mean, because those are the things I like about Hurricane Murakami, and I didn't really expect to have similar themes like that. I like that kind. I like that kind of thing a lot. Like memory kind of being confused with reality. Right? It's just like a weird, cool idea, but it also is kind of how we experience the world, especially if we're drunk all the time.
Come on, Silicon Valley, figure it out.
Which Capote was.
Right. Also that, yes.
It's thematic. It works.
I mean, I also think, whatever, I don't want to shoot all of my thematic wad at the beginning here, but it's a gun term, Matt.
Is it?
Maybe. Alec Baldwin's bullets were filled with wads, they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I don't want to I don't want to shoot hot ropes fully.
No. Well, but the other thing that I think, just because we were speaking about his age when he wrote these a minute ago, these were all written in a very politically charged time, theoretically, right? World War II, the end of World War II and the aftermath. None of that in any of these stories. I think Hitler's mentioned once as a kind of as a joke, someone was running, you would think that they thought I was Hitler or something. But these stories are all very in the mid to late 20s way, very self-centered, if that makes sense. They're very, not in a bad way, that's not necessarily meant as a dig, but they're very contained to an individual mind, or at most a couple.
Yeah.
What
is the what's the next story in the collection?
I will tell you in 1 second.
one. Wow.
Children on their birthdays.
Okay, so I think that's the second to last for us, Matt.
Yeah. Someone's gonna have to remind me though.
One?
I need to be kickstarted.
All right, I'll talk.
This one,
I can do the plot of this one if you want, Paul.
I'll do it.
Okay.
This is the one with oh shit, I opened the wrong page.
Fail.
This is the one with Miss Bobbitt, who's like the 10-year-old girl or whatever, who gets hit by the bus.
Oh, I like this
Remember
one
that
a
one?
lot. Yeah.
This one's one of my favorites, actually.
Yeah.
I thought this one was, yeah. So basically, I mean, the story starts out, the first line is, yesterday afternoon, the 6 o'clock bus ran over Miss Bobbitt. And you learn that Miss Bobbitt is kind of this like eccentric young little girl living in this southern town, which I think in this story it's not described. I don't think the setting is totally described.
No.
But yeah, she's kind of eccentric, kind of like weird. She's also kind of like a popular figure in town, I would say. People like generally maybe not like her, but at least know of her, and they know of her weird kind of quirky ways.
They're
She's
forced to
like,
respect her.
Yeah, which I think kind of is funny and adds to like her weird name. Like you think of Miss Bobbitt and you think like,
well, that's her, like,
woman.
Yeah, exactly, and she insists on being called that by everybody.
Yeah,
she's kind of like she's kind of like this like she's like a Shirley Temple type figure,
yeah,
right? Like this very
I can see that
kind of like not as bubbly as Shirley Temple, and certainly much more like ruthlessly capitalistic.
Yeah.
And
but she's got like a soft kind of like a, not motherly, but maybe matronly.
Yeah. Yes.
Type attitude that like it was prominent in 50s women, I guess. Like you got to be like you have to be an elegant woman and like do nice things for people. Like, I feel like that kind of element.
She has a finishing school, but self-taught kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah,
perspective.
Right, and it's this kind of classic, and she kind of like blows into town, this anonymous southern town, with her mother kind of trailing behind her, who's like this old, very kind of like wayfish looking, like doesn't speak and is like maybe foreign and like eats things that other people don't want to eat, and
she's the most mysterious character of the whole story.
Right. And she kind of captures the attention and the spirit of this whole like little town when she moves in and rents a room at the boarding house. But in her own mind, this is kind of only a waypoint on her way to Hollywood, which is where she ultimately wants to end up, and gets kind of close, which we can talk about.
Yeah, I think one of the most prominent scenes I remember from this one is the little black girl who gets like bullied. I forget her name. I'm trying to find it right now.
I don't think she has an official name.
I thought
she does. It's like Rosa something, maybe. There's a lot of characters. Give us a break, people.
Yeah, there's a lot of
There's a lot of there's 8 stories.
Rosalba Cat.
Sister Rosalba, yeah.
Cat.
Which when I read that, I was like, was she in Harry Potter? It's like, is that a Hufflepuff name in Harry Potter?
Yeah, maybe. She's loyal as hell.
She is loyal. But yeah, I mean, there's obviously a lot of racial themes in this short story collection too, but I think one of the most prominent scenes that I remember from reading it was when Miss Cat gets kind of bullied by, is it more than 2 boys? There's like Preacher.
Preacher and Billy Bob.
Billy Bob. And they just kind of fuck with her.
They're trying to kind of impress also Miss Bobbitt.
Yeah, true. Through
That's
bullying.
their method of like trying to be like, look at us.
We're hot dudes.
Yeah, doming. Yeah.
Yeah, we're doming. And their method of bullying is very like Robin Hood Men in Tights. Like if you don't pass, you gotta give us a toll to get your rolls or whatever. But yeah, Miss Bobbitt kind of comes over and rescues her, and then there's a really awesome line where he's just like, and they were friends for the next year.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I thought was just like a weird, quick, clever jump in time. You know?
Once again, like Miss Bobbitt, like, yeah, she's this, I think, 13-year-old girl who just like has this like plucky fucking like, self-improving, self-taught kind of autodidact spirit, which feels very American. And she's in this southern town, and like there's all these people who are also very like salt of the earth, and kind of like they're hicks, and they're kind of like whatever, uneducated, blah blah blah, all the things you could pin to them. And like Miss Bobbitt seems to engage their better nature, like the little boy Billy Bob, who seems to be the main character, although the whole story is told through the perspective of like some third party who I don't know, right? Like some maybe girl who's like potentially like also a little jealous of Miss Bobbitt. But the story is not told. The story is told through the perspective of like just some other kid,
an unknown
watching.
towns person. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sort of like the Sandlot.
And I don't know. Like I don't think it's a naive read to say like Miss Bobbitt is kind of like the story is also dedicated to someone who I didn't look up. But
This particular story?
Yeah.
Oh,
something Leiden.
Mine doesn't have that.
Leiden or Linden, but like.
Oh, Andrew Leiden.
Yeah. So if anyone wants to elaborate on that, I meant to look up that person, but I did not. She kind of like.
Whoever it is, they're not famous.
Brings the best out, I would say, of the town and of these kids. For reasons that might just be like literal entrepreneurial pluck and self-confidence.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, she has this kind of like mystical aura, I would say. Or she's written that way, like around her, that, as you say, Matt, kind of like draws people in and arguably changes them kind of like for the better, maybe.
But it's purely with this kind of sense of false charisma, that maybe not false charisma, but like a developed charisma that I think she got from her mom, or was it aunt? Was it mom? Her mom?
Her mom's the one with her, but she does not have any charisma.
No, she doesn't. But I think that like it's not, at least it's not displayed, but like the way the mom is portrayed, like, kind of having a different taste in food and having this idea that she's gonna like go out to Hollywood. I don't know. I was kind of actually thinking of The Great Gatsby a little bit, especially with the ending of her just dying abruptly. Mm-hmm. Like someone who is buying into the American dream in her own little girl type way.
Yeah,
definitely. It seems like her and her mom, the relationship almost feels like a reverse stage mom relationship. Yeah. Where, like, normally in those relationships, the parents are the ones who have these big dreams for their kids, and they're like pushing them. It seems like in this situation, Miss Bobbitt is like dragging her mom along, whether her mom wants to come along for it or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's You're right. It's funny. It's like a reversal of that.
But this was the other story that had me thinking about, like Paul already mentioned, the whole American sort of dream narrative and the way it's like sold and commodified and kind of like, used predatorily. Because of course, one of the other big things that happens in the story is this guy comes to town, this kind of like traveling showman.
Yeah.
Comes to town and he's putting on a show, and the big finale is going to be his wife doing like a racy kind of like striptease type show, which winds up being hilariously disappointing, and she gets booed, I guess. But the big sell there was that whichever one of the townspeople won the performance was going to get a live, like a real stage audition for a Hollywood production of some kind of movie, or a screen audition, whatever they're called, screen tester, I don't know.
Sure, yeah.
And of course, Bobbitt wins, with the way he described this scene, I thought was great. Her doing this like, you know, cutesy, but then also like showing her bloomers or whatever, and just doing this big dramatic split with Roman candles going off, singing the national
Star Spangled
Banner, and so she of course wins, but then the guy who is pretty obviously telegraphed as a grifter just skips town and nothing happens, and then Miss Bobbitt in her entrepreneurial spirit forms like a committee. I forget what it's called. It has a really funny name, but like a committee to track him down and hold him accountable.
It's like the committee to lynch.
Yes.
The dude.
Yes.
It's pretty violent.
Yeah. And you know, Capote goes through talking about her building, like getting flyers and sending them out to all these different organizations in the kind of like regional area, and ultimately she's successful and the guy's actually caught.
Yeah.
And some of the people who paid him get some restitution back in the town. And of course, her first thing that she says to them is, "You should invest in something smart, like me, going to Hollywood," talking to the like young boys in the town that get their money back.
Yeah, and she might not be wrong. She dies this tragic death, and that's what's hard to read in the story, right? Because like Billy Bob and this other like very like kind of like
Preacher Johnson or something.
Yeah,
they're violent. They're these violent, delinquent kids who potentially have like a good heart, and they're both kind of crushing on Miss Bobbitt, and it's like their competing gestures of affection that seem to cause her death, I guess. And I don't know what to take from that, but like they're both bringing these roses to her.
It's a weird dudes rock moment at the end, because they're like fighting and they hate each other, and then they're both kind of like, you know what, dude, like fuck it, like let's just bring her the flowers together.
Yeah.
And she runs.
Let's not beef over some bitch.
Let's marry her together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's be brother husbands.
And then of course she runs out into the road and is killed. I mean, I think there's. I don't know if you guys read this dimension in the story, but to me it was like a. So there's this is where the other kind of like magical realism stuff comes in here in this story for me, because so first of all, the first story that I read is Jug of Silver, which we'll talk about, which is about another kind of like vaguely mystical child capturing a town's attention.
Yep.
In a very different way.
Yeah.
But in this story, which is developed a little bit more, Miss Bobbitt at least one or two times makes the point about essentially saying that she's made a deal with the devil, where
she talks that is
about,
the turn.
She talks about I don't know if I have the passage highlighted exactly, but let's see. Yeah, I think I have it here.
Like the devil is a good man who you can, if you appeal to his vanity, you can sort of be given gifts.
Right. And specifically, you have to know like what the devil's good at and what Jesus is good at. And so if you want to be good at something, because she's like Jesus would never be able to help me with dancing. That's only something that the devil would be able to do. So I had to ask him to help me with that.
Yeah.
And so for me, that to me adds this little weird like bit of mystery and kind of mysticality to the story, because of course, like what's the kind of classic like Robert Johnson, like any of these like deal with the devil tales, they all end in tragedy, right? Because the devil's going to take his due, and it's that classic like trickster kind of Faustian bargain. And so I kind of read her being hit by the bus as like that deal kind of backfiring on her, if that makes sense. Because she does. She wins the competition. She has this charismatic personality. She can dance. Like, for all intents and purposes, the devil has lived up to his side of the bargain.
But there's all this other biographical information that complicates it as well. Like her mom is this big question mark. She's like, by Miss Bobbitt's account, like kind of a deaf mute. Like she's, except for the very end, when someone gifts Miss Bobbitt a chicken as she's like about to go to L.A. to eat on the bus or whatever. And Miss Bobbitt's like mom, quote unquote, is like very willing to eat all the guts and gizzards and shit inside. She's like, a chicken's a chicken.
Yeah.
She sounds at that last moment like she's very much got an opinion and very much is obviously capable of speaking. And like it's not quite as Miss Bobbitt says. Like there's something because it was obvious right from the get-go that there's something like superficial and kind of contrived in Miss Bobbitt's rendering of herself and presentation of herself, as though she's overcoming some embarrassing past of hers. Her dad is a crook, right?
Who's in
jail.
Prison,
Yeah. So, I mean, even from the get-go, even though there's like a wholesome aspect to her presence in the town and what she brings out in these other kids, like it's from a place already that's compromised. Like, like it's already fucked up seeming right as soon as she arrives.
Which I think, kind of getting back to the American Dream thing,
it's like Paper Moon. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie.
I have not.
Just a scam artist dad and like this like precocious kid and like there's no real hope for them.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. And it's always that false hope, right? That's sort of embedded in this concept of the American Dream that you see from Gatsby to this to how many other millions of works of art and literature. I just wanted to read this passage where she talks about the devil a little bit because I think it's pretty good.
Do it up.
Okay. So this is where she doesn't go to church, and she's come over to the house to talk to the narrator after the rest of his family has gone to church. The odors of a church are so offensive, she said, leaning forward with her hands folded primly before her. I don't want you to think me a heathen, Mr. C. I've had enough experience to know that there is a God and that there is a devil. But the way to tame the devil is not to go down there to church and listen to what a sinful, mean fool he is. No. Love the devil like you love Jesus, because he is a powerful man and will do you a good turn if he knows you trust him. He has frequently done me good turns, like at dancing school in Memphis. I always called in the devil to help me get the biggest parts in our annual show. That is common sense, you see. I knew Jesus wouldn't have any truck with dancing. Now, as a matter of fact, I have called the devil in just recently. He is the only one who can help me get out of this town. Not that I live here, not exactly. I think always about somewhere else where everything is dancing, like people dancing in the streets, and everything is pretty, like children on their birthdays. My precious papa said I live in the sky, but if he lived more in the sky, he'd be rich like he wanted to be. The trouble with my papa was that he did not love the devil. He let the devil love him.
I love that turn of phrase, dude. I love that.
Yeah.
I also highlighted that.
Yeah, it's a great sort of little monologue there.
He let the devil love him. Yeah, it's good. Do you want to hit up the next story?
Yeah, let's do it. We're
number 3.
We gotta keep it moving.
We do gotta keep it moving. We're not even halfway. Oof.
Yeah. The next story in my book is. You guys want to guess? Fun game.
Maybe they're going in like reverse order. Is it Shut a Final Door?
Yes.
Okay, so far they're going in reverse order.
All right.
Reverse order. Yeah.
All right. What is this one about? Do you want to do it, Paul, or do you want someone else to?
You guys can. I actually have to.
Pee?
We never say it on the podcast. I don't know why I just did.
Paul messaged us pee.
I wrote, I really have to, and then I wrote pee. What the hell's wrong with me?
Like no one could infer.
You just pierced the veil for all the audience.
Yeah, I'm losing my.
Anytime they
Yeah.
only hear two of us talking, it's because someone has to
Pierced
I'll
the
wait for a
veil.
second. So
No,
the
it's fine.
illusion.
No,
I'll
you
wait.
do.
I
Why
can do
would?
it.
What do you talk? Why
It's
would
a
you
bad
even
time
wait
to
then?
wait. Go
If the
pee, we're gonna
illusion's
do-
broken.
Okay, I'll fucking go. I'm gonna
Just
fucking
go pee.
Yeah,
you
fucking piss, you
idiot.
fucking pee filled bitch. All right,
Okay. Go for
water
it, Matt.
balloon.
Pierce the veil, pierce the balloon.
What was it again?
The shut a final door.
Oh, I actually, like this is just some sort of guy who's sad, right?
Yeah, this is about a sad boy who
He's also doing. I guess I could tie it into whatever common thread we're attempting to run through all this stuff by saying like he is attempting to further his own professional prospects,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And like,
kind of climbing the corporate ladder.
and that is obviously at odds with genuine personal connections. And he finds himself. I did get confused by the end of this. Like he finds himself pursued by something.
Well, right. So this is so yeah, right. It's kind of a chronicle of his. He gets this job at some kind of business, trying to climb the corporate ladder. In the process, kicks away the partner, the girlfriend who got him the job in the first place. Winds up kind of.
He keeps burning bridges.
Yes, he's burning bridges left and right. This guy, all kind of both because of his own kind of like selfishness, seemingly, and also because of his kind of inability to develop lasting, meaningful relationships. I think, right? Again, so we're seeing
Right.
like this theme. He starts hobnobbing a little bit with some high society type folks. Arguably, it's kind of a precursor to Capote's later life.
It felt like one of the more autobiographical short stories.
Yes, or like pre-biographical, because this would have been like before Capote even really was in that
Knew himself.
world, I guess.
It doesn't matter though, because
But
you're
yeah.
always the fucking my life a movie. You know what I mean? Like it's always kind of like that, right? Like
Right.
my life's a story.
That's a spicy question. Check out the Discord. So he winds up meeting this high society woman. What's her name? Margaret or Anna? Who I forget which one's which.
Margaret first.
Margaret first.
Anna
So
later.
and Anna. Okay, so Anna, ultimately winds up like destroying that relationship, and not that it was really ever like a relationship. She denies that it is in what I thought was a pretty funny passage.
Well, he starts by like Margaret is the girlfriend of a guy, the first guy who ever is friendly to the
Yes.
protagonist.
Right. Irving, I think is his name.
Yeah, I think so. And like, so his first relationship is to cuck and kind of
The protagonist is named Walter, by the way.
betray his first ever friend in New York.
Yeah.
So that's how it all starts. So it starts with a betrayal.
He stabs him, right? Am I remembering that?
They have like the beginnings of a fight in the bar, but I don't think anyone's ever. Like,
I don't think there's
like,
violence.
Yeah, no.
Really?
There might be a threat of that.
Okay,
But
I have
he-
the passage right here, so we'll be proven right or wrong.
All right, hit it.
Go for it.
I hate you. Then, almost in slow motion, he swung out and, as if he clutched a knife, struck Walter's chest. It was not much of a blow, and when Walter did nothing but smile, Irving slumped against the jukebox, screaming, "Fight me, you damn coward! Come on, and I'll kill you. I swear before God I will." So that was how they left him. See, I read that quickly, and I thought he stabbed him because I didn't read it correctly. But anyway.
No, Irving was a good boy, and the tragedy of that was that, as Margaret says, now he's learned to hate, and that's
Yes.
what Irving is capable of, or not Irving, Walter is capable of doing. That's his special power, is that he's a piece of shit.
He's like the opposite of Miss Bobbitt. He just brings out the worst in people and makes them
Yeah.
the worst.
Right, and he slowly climbs this sort of corporate ladder where he's able to identify like who will further his position.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's got that ability, and ultimately Margaret, who he destroys his first ever legitimate friendship with in New York, to have, he then also fucks her over. And is like, okay, Margaret introduced me to these people, like Rosa, blah, 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 like some sort of high society woman.
Anna, right?
And then also Anna, but
yeah.
Rosa, like some sort of like fucking like,
oh, yeah, her too.
You know what I mean? Like Hampton's party. Ultimately giving him a job at a, like Mad Men style like advertising firm.
Some kind of like, yeah.
And from there, that's where I sort of get confused. It's like he's alienated everybody, and he, I think, still works at that firm, but...
Well, he eventually gets fired. This part, I think, was a little confusing. He gets fired for, like, it seems like kind of like planting, like, a fake news story or something about someone that gets published. That was my read on it. And then the boss finds out about it, and the boss is characterized as like kind of like whimsical in his affections anyway, and like is known to like fire people based on like whose personal preference day to day.
Right.
But I think there was something where he bungles it and like does something really stupid and kind of like petty.
Yeah, I can't remember.
I'll try to find it, but it's not. It was not particularly clear to me, and it could just be like a honestly like a language thing almost, because this was like a different time and there was like references to like a magazine. So like, okay, this is the part. So this is on the very beginning of like subsection 4, or chapter 4. I don't know what you call it in a short story. Subchapter, whatever, small chapter. Listen, the fan, turning wheels of whisper. He said, you said, they said, we said, round and round, fast and slow, while time recalled itself in endless chatter. Old broken fan breaking silence. August the 3rd, the 3rd, the 3rd. August the 3rd, a Friday, and it was there, right in Winchell's column, his own name. Big shot ad exec Walter Rainey and dairy heiress Rosa Cooper are telling intimates to start buying rice. Walter himself had given the item to a friend of Winchell's. He showed it to the counter boy at the Whelan's where he ate breakfast. That's me, he said. I'm the guy. And the look on the boy's face was good for his digestion. So I don't know what Winchell is or who Winchell is. I'm wondering if that was maybe some kind of like famous newspaper columnist at the time or something. Because that sounds like a headline to me, right? Big shot ad exec and dairy heiress are telling intimates to start buying rice. I'm assuming that means it's like a wedding announcement, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like a joke because him and Rosa are not engaged and are not going to like get married, but he's kind of like planting that out there to get his name in the newspaper was kind of my read on it.
Yeah, I think the main takeaway from this to me was like a conniving, untrustworthy person is unwilling to deal with the fact that people perceive him as that correctly, basically.
Right.
That was sort of my takeaway from that. It's like right at the beginning of the story, it's like, what is the first line? Walter, listen to me. If everyone dislikes you, works against you, don't believe you, they do so arbitrarily. You create the situation for yourself. And then there was like a little bit down. It says, what was the use of having friends if you couldn't discuss them objectively? And like...
that one hit me hard.
Yeah.
That was me. That was me in high school. Yeah. That was me in high school.
And so, I mean, I think it's like right there.
I was like, dude, you're my best friend. I just think you're objectively a bad person.
Yeah. It's like... You're my best friend, so why wouldn't I feel like you're sort of like a butterfly that I've sort of shoved a pin through the abdomen of? So I think that's sort of the main thing at issue in this particular story is like Walter sees these people as stepping stones, and therefore like he feels like he's reckoning with them objectively, but it's objectively. It's subjectively. It's like, he's like, I know what I need to do to advance myself, and the other shoe's going to drop. Well, that's what I mean. The other shoe's going to have to drop for that because he's using people as a means to an end instead of a means in and of themselves.
And so ultimately he gets fired and from the job, and he's like, all right, what am I like? I'm going to take a vacation or something, and he's going to go to this small town in upstate New York, Saratoga Springs, which he went to as a child with his father, I think, for vacations. And so he gets there, and he has a series of like some weird dreams, right? That are his kind of past coming back to like infect the present, like we've been talking about a little bit.
Yeah.
And he gets this, so he has a bunch of these weird dreams, and he gets this phone call just before he's about to leave New York. I'll just read this section. Just as the music ended, the telephone rang. He simply stood there, afraid somehow to answer, and the lamplight, the furniture, everything in the room went quite dead. When at last he thought it had stopped, it commenced again, louder, it seemed, and more insistent. He tripped over a footstool, picked up the receiver, dropped and recovered it, said, yes? Long distance, a call from some town in Pennsylvania, the name of which he didn't catch. Following a series of spasmic rattlings, a voice, dry and sexless and altogether unlike any he'd ever heard before, came through. Hello, Walter. Who is this? No answer from the other end, only a sound of a strong, orderly breathing. The connection was so good it seemed as though whoever it was standing beside him with his lips pressed against his ear. I don't like jokes. Who is this? Oh, you know me, Walter. You've known me a long time. A click and nothing. And so then he leaves and goes to Saratoga, and then he doesn't really know anybody there. He has a weird dream on the train, and he meets this woman at a hotel in Saratoga where she's like a cripple, not like a cripple, but has like a club foot, right?
She has a club
something
foot.
Wrong with her foot. And she's there to be essentially the exhibit for her doctor to give like a medical talk on at a conference.
Yeah.
Like the Elephant Man.
And they wind up talking. Yeah, exactly. They wind up talking, and they go up to her bedroom, implicitly with the intention to have sex. But he's like, I don't think I can do this with the clubfoot lady. And then her phone starts ringing, and he gets the same phone call that he got in New York before he left. And it's this mysterious phone call. And so now he's like kind of panicking, and then he flees, and he winds up in New Orleans at the end of the story. And the story ends with the phone ringing again and him like putting a pillow over his head, not wanting to answer it.
Yeah, I don't think these are like fully mysterious in the sense that it's like it's people's consciousness or conscience, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like it feels very clearly to me like that's the it takes various guises, and like like the contexts are different, but at the same time it's like it's still people in communion with lost opportunity and the consciousness of that, right? Because even in another story, which we're going to talk about, Miriam, like that's the same thing. It's like
it's both their double, and they're kind of like past.
Yeah. So it's just like it's to me it feels very much like this engaging with the newly popular, not completely new, but like fully settled in to the, I don't know, public consciousness, sort of Freudian subconscious or conscious, and it's reality as a concept in most people's minds now, right? I don't know. That's the best I can do. Is like,
Paul, I don't know what you thought, but this story felt, out of all of them, I agree with everything you're saying, Matt, in terms of like the role psychoanalysis is clearly kind of playing in some of these stories. This story of all of them felt the most Murakami to me.
Really?
I think. Well, maybe it's just because it reminded me of that very, very specific story in Men Without Women, which me and Paul reviewed on YouTube. Subscribe to Spinecrackers YouTube channel. That story where at the end of it, it's a very similar thing, right? It's a dude in a hotel room, but there's like some presence like clawing at the hotel windows. You remember that story?
Yeah.
That's basically the same as the ending of this story. It's like being pursued by this unknown kind of entity that follows him to this lonely hotel room far from home and is like clawing to get in.
Yeah. And actually, the Clubfoot reminded me of a different Murakami story that you guys haven't read that I read in Florida called South of the Border, West of the Sun. Because there was a woman in that story that was kind of like the main woman the guy was pursuing that had like, not a clubfoot, but she had like one leg smaller than the other, like a limp or something. And that stuck out to me. But I wasn't thinking Murakami with this story. I was actually thinking a bit of Dostoevsky.
Yeah.
yeah,
Of just that kind of just like, I don't know, giving in to not the American dream in his novels, but like giving into the idea that I'm just going to like be a cutthroat person, but then the guilt kind of forming within the dreams, and then the last ditch, like putting the pillow over your head because you just like
yeah.
subconsciously suddenly feel the guilt of all your actions.
You can't shut it out anymore.
Can't shut it out.
Yeah, the Raskolnikov thing.
Right.
Yeah. Don't murder.
Don't.
You'll feel
Hey.
bad. That's the point
Because
of
you'll
that
feel
book.
bad.
Official Spinecrackers PSA. Guys, don't murder.
Don't murder.
Don't
There's
murder.
there's this artist that I like. Sorry, this is a small tangent, but someone asked him on a Q&A on like Twitch one time. He was like, "What's the opposite of love?" And he was like, "Don't murder." I just thought it was the weirdest, funniest answer.
That is a weird answer.
Yeah, who was this?
That was Dave Raposa.
Yeah.
Shout out.
Other
Yeah.
people know.
Come on the podcast.
I would actually like to get Dan Warren on the podcast. I think he might do it. It's like David Raposa's like co-author for their comics. That'd be cool.
Whoever you can nab, do it.
Yeah.
So, what else did... I don't know. What else did you guys think about this story? Anything?
No. Zero thoughts.
No, it just felt like
We gotta move on.
it just felt like the like kind of like haunting thoughts of somebody who is living their life fully to only further their placement in some sort of professional setting.
But also, like it's not just like a full American Psycho thing. He's also just like incapable of love, right? Like partly because of that, but also because of just like some, I don't know, some like deep-seated, like you say, psychological issue. Which again, right? That's kind of a theme.
Yeah, there's a lot of like very hollow people
Yes.
who are missing some like key piece to them that like would allow them to be not constantly questioning whether or not they're living a correct life. You know what I mean?
Yep. And I think this guy specifically, Walter, that passage that I read, where he's seeing this, because when the story starts, and this is it's kind of a literary thing that Capote does a lot, like he takes you to the end of the story and then tells you the story and then goes back to the end, right?
Yeah.
That happens in the story about Miss Bobbitt, where we literally find out in the first line that she gets hit by the bus at the end, and then we hear the rest of the story and she gets hit at the bus at the end, and
He Tarantino's us.
yeah, exactly. And then I think maybe the next story we're going to talk about has that same feature. But this one does too, where at the beginning you see, not at the very beginning, but you see him in New Orleans on this hotel bed staring up at the ceiling fan and kind of contemplating the like cyclicality of it, right? And it seems like that's kind of his view of life, right? It's just like everything moves in a circle and no one's ever going anywhere and it's all kind of fucking pointless.
It's not time as a flat circle, it's time as a ceiling fan.
Time is a ceiling
Yeah,
fan.
That's what
Exactly.
Nietzsche really meant.
A lot of ways to say it. Yeah. But he's Rust Cole. He's Rust Cole by the end of it.
Yeah, a little bit.
Well, Rust Cole has some...
Rust Cole has a moral
compass.
compass, yeah.
He's a Gryffindor.
We're not talking about him, and we're not doing
Not yet.
house ratings for him.
I don't even know how we're going to do that with this book.
No.
It's
Do
not
we
gonna
have
be
to?
a thing.
Oh, God. We'd be
No.
skipping it 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, but it's okay.
Let's
Some
just
people
pick,
say
like,
that we
two
know they
people.
don't even want to hear it
Yeah,
We'll
apparently
talk
that's
about
true.
that. You
later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
absolute assholes.
That's
Yeah.
got to be a prank.
Yeah, you're
I
pranking
mean, that's
us.
the best part
You know
of the
who
whole
you are.
podcast.
You know who
Yeah.
you are.
Where's Ashton Kutcher? You're punking us.
And the one particular question you asked, sir, I have a great answer for, so stay tuned.
Next week, baby.
Yeah, there's one guy who's gonna basically get a show all about him.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Paul. What's next in your book? Wait, I'm curious if we are actually going in reverse order. So the next one, going in reverse order for us, would be the Headless Hawk.
That is not it.
Okay.
Oh,
Damn. All right, what's
it's
next in yours?
Jug of Silver.
Okay.
Jug of silver, talk to me. Makes me wanna feel like a teenager. Right?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is.
That sounds right to me. I don't know what you just did, but it sounds good.
Yeah, LCD sound system.
Oh, isn't it sound? Is it Sound of Silver? That's the album.
Yeah, I know. That's the joke.
That's the joke. Okay, I don't know. I'm stupid. I don't fucking know.
Fucking moron. Yeah. Anyway.
All right. Who wants to do this one? Matt, you do this one.
I need help.
Okay.
Someone else do it.
In more ways than one.
Yep. So someone else do it.
All right, fine. I'll do this one. This is the first story chronologically, I think, in this collection. The first one that he wrote. It's also one of the shorter ones that we read, I think. It's about a small town in the South. The narrator is the nephew of the kind of general store owner in the town.
Oh, the coin counting one.
Yeah, and the owner of the store is getting some competition from a new guy who opened another store basically across the town square. And in an effort to drum up business, he buys this big old jug of wine, drinks it, and goes to the bank and fills it up with coins. I think nickels. I think it's all.
Yeah.
I think it's all nickels. And runs this contest for the town that if you come in here, if you buy the requisite amount, of like 50 cents worth of stuff, you can take a guess, and I'll write it down in my little ledger book of how much money is in the jug. And at Christmas, we will reveal the amount, and whoever guessed the closest will get all the money. And so business is booming. Then this new kid kind of rolls into town, or he's already kind of like lived in town, but on the outskirts, it seems like. And his name is Appleseed. That's just his name. That's all he's known by. And he has this young sister, Mitty. And he becomes obsessed with this jug, and he's like, I'm gonna get how much is in there. And they're like, how? You just gotta guess. And he's like, no, I'm just gonna count it. And they're like, that doesn't make any sense. And so he comes into the store like every day for like a couple months, sits there and just stares at this jug for hours. And Christmas comes. He finally ultimately puts down his guess, which is $77.35. And Christmas comes, and then ultimately that's the exact amount of money that's in the jug, and he wins it, and that's basically the story.
Yeah. This story actually points to the American Dream theme pretty hard too, right? Because I
Yes.
mean, once he wins, he becomes like a town hero, basically. Like he made the winning shot at a high school basketball game. Or something.
Yes. He becomes like a local legend.
Yeah, and that points to like the ideas of, I don't know, just luck and like getting good fortune and all that sort of American dream shit.
Right. Well, and also how, like, because he just kind of like disappears after he wins. Like one of the other themes or like subplots of the book, I think, or of that story, I guess, is people want to know, like, well, what are you going to do if you win the money? That's like what everyone's talking about in the town. Some people are like, oh, I'm going to buy a friggin' boat, or I'm going to go on a trip, or whatever, right? And he won't tell anyone what he's going to do with the money, but he gets it, and ultimately one of the things that he does is buy his sister like a new kind of like artificial set of teeth, because she has these, and I think there's a lot of like class elements to these various stories, whether it's upper class or lower class or whatever. Various people trying to achieve, even in the last story, Walter was kind of arguably trying to achieve a version of the American dream, climbing the corporate ladder, being the ruthless businessman, et cetera, right? And so here we have that on like a much smaller scale. But like you say, Paul, he has, it's like the Bruce Springsteen, like glory days, dude. It's like someone makes the winning shot at the high school basketball game, or guesses how much money's in the jug at the big Christmas gathering, and they're go down in kind of like local fucking lore,
Yeah. Well, it also it makes me think too of just like people that make a game-winning, or not a game-winning shot, but like a shot, like a half-court shot at a basketball game.
Yeah.
And they're like a 38-year-old guy, and it's like one of the like on their deathbed, they're gonna think of that as like one of the top 5 things, maybe even above getting married or whatever for some of these people.
Right.
And it's just like incredibly. Like, it's understandable, of course, because we're Americans or whatever, but it's also just like, it is a depressing thought, isn't it?
Well, and it also, I think it also speaks to one of the other themes that Capote is getting at a lot in a lot of these stories, is that like most people's lives are like pretty like small, you know what I mean? Like your success, your successes and your failures are always kind of like insignificant in the kind of grand scheme of things, as it were, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I think, I don't know, that to me was part of it too. But I think this story has class elements. I think that it has a kind of political undertones, very light political undertones, I guess, because these kids are kind of like the dirty kids from out in the sticks who have to walk 8 miles into town every day just to be there and sit and look at these coins. And it's like it becomes this like fetish object, you know what I mean, for him.
Well, it reminds me a bit too of the Pearl, I would say.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Thinking about like, the
I think
lottery themes of the Pearl. And
Appleseed doesn't really become like morally corrupted in the same way that, what's his name in the Pearl?
Fuck.
Yeah,
it's been 3 weeks, dude.
It's poof gone.
It's poof.
Yeah,
Might as well never read it.
yeah, exactly. He doesn't become morally corrupted in the same way that guy does in that book. But
but also it's a very short story. This one, right? It's like you're just getting a little bit of a brush of a sketch of the theme.
I think the one of the big things though, right, is like
Kino.
Similarly,
Kino. Nice, dude.
Similarly, you get a sense that the environment in which this person, Appleseed or Kino, no matter who you're looking at, like they're not in a world that should be. They're in an environment that is against them to an unnatural degree.
Yeah.
And it's fabricated, and it's not necessarily what needs to be the case. And like I think that's true of both of those stories, and that's what a common element of both of those stories.
I mean, it's basically because, like I mentioned, Appleseed uses a big chunk of the money to get his sister new teeth.
Right,
and,
to be a movie star, which is...
To be a movie star, right, which is a connection to the other story.
Yeah.
Miss Bobbitt.
And but like it's basically the modern day equivalent of like someone gets like some grievous injury and they have to fucking start a GoFundMe for healthcare. And that's basically what Appleseed is doing, trying to get this money for his sister's teeth.
Right. Yeah.
I also wanted to just make the connection that again, with some of the like spooky weirdness that's going on in all of these stories, to me, I don't know why that stood out to me so much, but I immediately was like, magical realism, these are weird and spooky, but for me in this story, one of the recurring things that Appleseed keeps saying is like, oh, this mystical woman back home told me that I have special skills because I was born with a call on my brain. And so he, in a very similar way to Miss Bobbitt, is this weird, like, kind of pseudo mystical kid that comes into town and like captures everybody's attention, because of, in her case, right, this deal she made with the devil, and in his case, because of some mystical premonition that he got from somebody from when he was a kid.
It's this beautiful combo of like that, and then some grounding, just tragic, very physically grounded thing.
Just like poverty porn.
Well, just like, I'm I found
that's a term, I assume.
Yeah, that's a
okay.
Term. That's
it is.
It's like when you glorify, like, not glorify, but like try to make romantic like life in poverty or people who are in poverty or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, this kid is Appleseed's like, I found this gypsy and she was like, you have an omen, you have a call on your brain.
She was
or it's like,
why don't you do the Capote voice again, or the?
I'll try the Capote voice in a second.
God,
it's fun to try. Or it's Miss Bobbitt and it's like her mother. It's like, what the fuck's going on there? And I kind of appreciate that about these two stories. It's like there's never something far from your mind about the grounded, weird sadness and sacrifice of something, somebody, some, person. So even Appleseed, you're like, where the fuck did this kid come from? Who the fuck is this like weirdo?
right?
Who is potentially taking advantage herself or himself of his credulity to say that he's some sort of chosen person for something positive, and then like she's not part of his family, he's not part of his family. So like, what the fuck? What's going on?
Well, I mean, and that also adds to the a thread throughout the stories too that I don't totally know how to grapple with. Is again in this story, there's a little kid that seems to have these mystical, or at least interesting, ideals to them, right? And we're going to get to another one soon about
there's a purity of focus. There's like a purity of I think there's a tragic sense of possibility with these kids.
Maybe that's it. Yeah,
I feel like that's true for both.
Or maybe Truman Capote was like a fan of Asian horror films and just thought that kids were scary, like
The Grudge.
Like 60 years later.
Well, Miriam could definitely be The Grudge.
Yes.
Right? Or Ringu or something,
Yeah. Yeah.
Miriam could be Samara very easily.
Oh, totally. Yeah. If that story was titled Samara, I'd be like, hey.
You'd be like, correct.
Correct. Correct. Correct. Actually, one thing about Jug of Silver that I wanted to mention that I couldn't get out of my head was I was just picturing like this is like a David Blaine skit or prank.
I did like
like he just goes into a town and he's just like, I'm gonna guess how many fucking coins are in here. I'm gonna do it. And he spends like 6 months studying how he could possibly like add up the coins, and then he just does it.
I'm a fan of David Blaine. I think David Blaine's
cool.
Oh,
me too, actually. I think he's awesome. I mean, did he get Me Too'd though?
Did he?
I feel like he might, maybe.
All I know is he just did dumb stuff that wasn't necessarily magic. He's like, I'm gonna be put me underwater.
Yeah, well, he fucking like broke the world record for like 2 years for holding his breath with like oxygen. It's like, It was awesome, and he had like a weird. I watched his TED talk, and he was like, I actually thought about how I could cheat and do this while cheating because he was like, I've literally cheated and done because I'm a magician. I like cheat, obviously, but he was like, I'm just gonna do it, and he like fucking did it. But he is a funny character though because like,
wait, we're
his
talking
whole
about
deal is
David
just
Blaine? I'm
We're
sorry.
talking about David
like,
Blaine
I went
now.
pee. I also went pee.
his whole deal
Welcome
is
behind
just
the
like
scenes, people.
his whole deal is just like my mom believed in me from when I was 5 years old, so I can do anything. Like that's his whole persona, and that's why he's a magician because his mom believed in him.
not apropos of what we're discussing.
True.
You know,
Yeah, it's kind of true. Sorry, I'm
if
talking
you have
about
some
David Blaine
delusional
too much.
parent,
His mom told him he had a call on his brain.
yeah. If you have some idiot delusional parent who's willing to be like, you know, you can be in a oxygenless cube of plastic for longer than anyone.
Yes. So the next story
Yep.
is, you guessed it, Matt, Miriam.
Okay.
It's Miriam.
So this is one of the hitters from this collection.
I like this very much. This is just about an older woman, not necessarily elderly, but older, living alone, who is haunted by essentially, like, she's not albino, but she's just this ghostly, blondie child.
I was basically picturing Damien from The Omen,
See,
but in female form.
No, I was picturing more like The Brood with Cronenberg.
I was
These
picturing
weird,
the
just like
ghost of
blondie,
Christmas
weird
Present.
kids.
Yeah.
I was picturing the ghost of Christmas Present.
Yeah.
Or no, what was the creature we had just looked up, Gabe?
A changeling.
A changeling.
Yeah.
I thought of like a sort of changeling with her.
Changeling.
Yeah. She
Well, she kind of is, right? She kind of is.
Well, okay. So what's the plot here? What happens?
Basically, there's an old woman, like Matt said, not maybe too old, but oldish, single, kind of like. She just has like kind of a repetitive life, and she just does her own fucking thing over and over again.
I believe a widower, right?
I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think. Sorry, I thought you said it.
Wow,
like that. I'm
dude.
sorry. I thought you said it like that.
What if I
Okay.
did? Who cares?
Sorry. But yeah, basically
Asshole.
this like young. No, Matt, I love you. I'm sorry.
Matt, he was just analyzing you as a friend objectively.
Yeah.
But this young 10-year-old girl, Miriam, comes into her life in a weird way and just kind of just like starts sticking around.
Yeah, it's so weird.
And it's just like, well, it's like a snowstorm or something, or a rainstorm, and she's like insisting on staying, and she's like, I want food or whatever. Can I stay here? And the old woman's kind of like, no, like, why are you here? Get out of here. But sorry, I lost my train of thought a little bit. But
Well, the way they first meet is pretty innocuous, right? Like this woman decides to kind of go out, Mrs. H.T. Miller. who I'm assuming is like, that's the old convention of like, if someone calls you, it's like, my wife back then would be like Mrs. Gabriel, whatever, because it turns out that Mrs. Miller's first name is also Miriam, which is also the young girl's name, which is obviously significant. So Mrs. Miller, you know, she makes a point at the beginning, or Capote makes a point at the beginning in describing her, like, her actions are rarely spontaneous. She's just like this, just like, she's just having a normal one, like, constantly, basically.
yeah.
And she's like, I'm going to go out to a movie tonight. And she goes out to the movie, and there's this young girl there who's just kind of like standing around, and she's like, hey, can I ask you a favor? Can you just buy me a ticket, because they won't let me in without a adult guardian or whatever. And she's like, yeah, sure, fine. And then I think they go in, and the girl starts giving her weird ass vibes. And then she, like you said, Paul, there's like a big snowstorm, and she shows up at her house dressed very inappropriately for the weather, like late at night. and it's like, hey, can I just come in and hang out?
Yeah.
And she does, and then things happen. We can read some sections and so on and so forth. But then she comes back with a trunk of her things, and she's like, "Yep, I live here now." And like Mrs. Miller kind of like freaks out. She goes to get the neighbors. Like, there's this creepy kid in my house, and they won't leave. And the neighbors oblige and go check, and there's no one there. And then Miss Miller goes back up and starts to kind of like drift off, and the ending is very ambiguous, right? Because she is drifting off into this kind of dreamlike state, which again is this recurring situation for Capote, where these characters are like in this liminal space between. Wait, what? What happened? Can you not hear me? Oh, I can't hear either of you. Fuck, hold on.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
All right, and we're back. We had some technical issues, as is wont to happen.
Yeah.
Like you do, as one does. So anyway, I was just
the Zoom podcast life, it just happens.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If you're not like technically engaging, you're not having zero technical problems. Right?
Yes. Yeah, Elon Musk says that all the
dude,
time.
you just blew my mind, bro.
Dude. Make sure to hold and inhale. Yeah.
All right, so anyway, I was just finishing up describing the plot of Miriam and saying that the ending of the story is ambiguous because Mrs. Miller is kind of drifting off in this dreamlike state that Capote likes to describe, and she has some feeling or some sense, some kind of vibe that something's happening. She hears like a bureau door close or something, and she opens her eyes, and then the ending of the story is just like Miriam says hello or something.
Yeah, once again, it's like the telephone being, right, that we discussed prior. It's like a conscience almost, like a person who is engaging with some aspect of themselves that they don't really want to.
See, go
ahead, Paul. You have a spicy read?
I have a spicy read, maybe you got. I thought you would have read this the same way I did, but I thought Miriam was deaf.
Oh shit! Okay.
I thought Miriam was visiting Mrs. Miller, and death was approaching her. And when she says hello at the end, it's because she had died, and she's like in fucking, I don't know, purgatory or Deathland or whatever. She was
It could be. I mean, it's also interesting because in one of the stories that we have left to discuss, there's a pretty vivid image of like a younger version of one of the characters as like a homunculus demon on their back. And I wonder, we don't get really anything about Mrs. Miller's childhood in this story, but you wonder about what the kind of memory or connection, because she's kind of written as like I said, like just like having a normal one, but also kind of like a lonely, walled off person who doesn't really like get out or talk to people. And so you wonder what kind of like revenant might come back for her from her previous lives, I suppose.
Okay, the main reason I thought Miriam was death is there's a line that I'm trying to find right now where Miriam is trying to kiss Mrs. Miller goodnight. And I just thought, kiss of death, right? Is it that clear?
True.
And then, and Mrs. Miller kind of like, she's like, no, don't kiss me. And I just kind of saw that as like her kind of fending off the inevitable death that is coming to her in her boring ass life.
I definitely buy that.
Yeah, that makes some sense to me for sure. And I mean, like, it's interesting because I wonder if like, I think death is definitely a plausible reading because at the very end, before Miriam, reappears, there's this paragraph that I thought was both, like good, well written and good to read, but also maybe speaks to some of this stuff. Suddenly, closing her eyes, she felt an upward surge, like a diver emerging from some deeper, greener depth. In times of terror or immense distress, there are moments when the mind waits as though for a revelation, while a skein of calm is woven over thought. It is like a sleep or a supernatural trance, and during this lull, one is aware of a force of quiet reasoning. Well, what if she had never really known a girl named Miriam, that she had been foolishly frightened on one street? In the end, or on the street, in the end, like everything else, it was of no importance. For the only thing she had lost to Miriam was her identity. But now she knew she had found again the person who lived in this room, who cooked her own meals, who owned a canary, who was someone she could trust and believe in, Mrs. H.T. Miller. And so it's like Miriam is this weird, like spectral double of Mrs. Miller. And and again, I'm obsessing about it a little bit, but I feel like that naming convention, because I'm assuming HT, there's nowhere in there that could be Miriam. That's got to be her husband's name. But that's the identity that she is adopting as like the thing that's grounding her. I live alone. I cook my own meals. I am the wife of this dead man. And it's almost like her first name is coming back to haunt her in a way, in this like spectral child. And I don't know if that's like a feminist point or something, or what he's going for there exactly. But I feel like the naming has some significance here.
Well, it's almost like the haunting notion of an anti-feminist life, right? Is like if you do claim or think of yourself as just like the widower of your husband, is that like
it's just widow, right? Widower is a husband.
Yeah. Well, gender's not real, so
I said it. I did the same mistake before. So
I think I heard you say that, so I said it again because I'm a parrot.
Or a canary, like Miss
I'm
Miller
a canary.
was.
Yeah. Good tie-in. But yeah, maybe I don't know. Maybe it's Capote trying to say like you failed at your life and death is coming to you because you deserve it or something.
Well, and again, there's that same line, like not the exact same line, but something that was like one of the first passages I read. Just these throwaway lines that Capote puts in there that I think are like pretty telling. In the end, like everything else, it was of no importance. It's like all of this shit, none of it matters. It's all this like flat ceiling fan rotating in some anonymous hotel in fucking New Orleans. And we, again, just go through all this weird shit and nothing's different at the end of it.
I was talking to you about this the other night, Gabe, a couple of weeks ago. This is how I feel about life in general. So I'm a big Capote fan after this.
That nothing matters.
Yeah. That looks deep in thought right now.
Why did you guys like this story so much? You both said you enjoyed it a lot.
Matt, you go first.
Well, just for me, just the image of like a ghost that kind of is this. I think it's important, like this sort of child, right? Because like this ghost of closed doors, like you've made all these decisions in your life. Again, this feels so much like the work of somebody who is the age that Truman Capote is. Late 20s, mid 30s span, where you go, I had all these visions for myself. I had dreams, like the other story we were talking about. And I made decisions that made certain of those dreams impossible to ever realize. And that's just a sort of reality. And that's something that someone wrestles with for the first time around the time Truman Capote was writing, right?
Right.
For us, it's like,
which I don't know. Part of the significance of the title of the last story, Shut a Final Door. It's like
Yeah.
Life is in some ways like a process of shutting doors, both by choice, but also just like by the passage of time, right? Like there are doors that are just shut inevitably after a certain period of time, right? Like no one in this room is ever, like no one in this conversation is ever going to be a professional athlete. That door has been shut, right? No,
I mean,
no one.
I beg to differ.
Okay,
Right.
That's fine. Yeah. Go off, King. But like things happen where, as you say, Matt, like, but I think that there's a deep fear in a lot of Capote's characters of other people, but also of the doors that might still be open for them, whether that's with love or with sort of just like making human connection. And there's like a preemptive wanting to close those doors. And I feel like Mrs. Miller is like deeply afraid of like something. I don't know what it is. Life, people.
I feel like she's afraid of just the reckoning, period. It's like some of these stories are about like what happens when you make a choice and the limits you have as a person. Miss Miller, it feels, and this is an early story, like I think this was written a couple years. This was a more early story than the one we were reading before. Like,
well, apparently this is like the first one of the collection that
So okay, perfect. So like, yeah, it definitely feels like the most vague in the sense, not in a bad way, but like the most broad. Like, here is a person who is probably 20 years older than Truman Capote who's writing, in his conception, reckoning with all of the things that they've let slip by.
Yeah.
And just literally being haunted by that in the form of a like changeling, weird, ghostly girl that is like the childhood dead dreams of this person.
All right, next story. We got 3 more. We got to move here, people.
Yeah,
Oh
what
my
the fuck's
God.
next? What the fuck's next? What the fuck's next? Fuck.
yeah.
Fuck.
This is the one that
It's taking too long. Go. What's the next one?
This is the longest one of the collection. It's the one that
No.
I read half of, so you guys can take this one away because
We're gonna infuriate everyone and take the least amount of time with this dumb story. The Headless Hawk.
The Headless Hawk. What is this fucking?
Some
horror
fucking
story,
yeah, some fucking some fucking dude buys a painting and it's like this hawk has got no head.
What is this? Edgar Allan Poe bullshit? What the
Yeah.
fuck? Next story.
Okay, I can be quick summarizing this one at least, but I do think this is one that we could talk about for a long time. I got to put my cards on.
I know we did wait too long. Yeah.
But it opens with this guy Vincent, sort of like seeing this again, kind of this weird spectral woman around, and he sees her in like a storefront, and he kind of like is vaguely following her or whatever. And it turns out, but then we go to like a flashback, and this is a woman that he was in a relationship with. He's like the manager of an art gallery, and she comes in kind of disheveled and all kind of out of sorts, and tries to sell a painting, right? And it's this painting, this like weird kind of like folk arty painting, and there's like a beheaded body and a hawk that's painted like without a head. And she leaves him this cryptic way to contact her. She's like staying at the YWCA. He can't get in touch with her. A few months go by. He finds her again. They develop this relationship. It becomes increasingly clear that she's like maybe like a mental institution escapee, or someone who was in a mental institution at some point and was released, because she keeps referencing this Mr. Destronelli, who we assume was the kind of like person who ran the place and was maybe potentially like abusive. And she thinks that this person is coming to find her and kill her essentially at all times, right? And he asks her at one point, like, who is this person? And she's like, well, he looks like you or me or anyone. He's everywhere. He's everybody. And ultimately, of course, the relationship ends. He kind of just like packs up her stuff and leaves it outside the door. And of course, he's characterized as this being sort of one in a long series of like relationships for him that have failed, and also that have been with, shall we say, eccentric people that he has always wound up kind of hurting and betraying, right? And then at the end, which is sort of the very end of the story, wraps around again to the beginning, and she's kind of like following him around, walking behind him, haunting him, and they sort of meet under a streetlight in the rain and just kind of stare at each other. And I think we don't really know if this is the actual person, right, or the sort of memory that he has of this person that's haunting him.
Why do we need to go further? Let's just do the next story.
All right.
Good summary though.
Yeah, that was a great summary.
It's a good story. There's some interesting parts. There's a really interesting dream sequence. This is what I was referencing in the last story, where he's at a party and he sees everyone he knows with like weird demon homunculus versions of themselves clinging to their back.
Yeah.
And I think significantly, this is where I think the dealing with death thing is important as a theme, is because the version of himself that's clinging to him is like this old decrepit version of him, but the version of this girl that he's been involved with, her demon is a younger version of herself. So it's like her life has been affected by her previous trauma, and his life is being affected by his imagined kind of projected trauma in the future, specifically like the inevitability of death. So anyway,
yeah. I think the takeaway is like he's another one of these adrift people.
Yes.
In New York City. Right. I think that's another common theme is just the city, and it's just like there's a lot of like imagery trying to evoke deep sea, underwater. I'm at sea. I'm in this alien, oceanic medium.
It's like a callback to that metaphor from Miriam, where Mrs. Miller is described as like a diver coming up from this green depth, And I feel like this guy is down there and kind of stays there the whole time.
Or just
I think the difference between what the male character and the female character see too is kind of like a Freudian thing too for me too. It's like male trauma, it tends to be like a projection, and female trauma can lead towards the past. Potentially, maybe I'm leaping.
It could be. It could be a psychoanalytic
story.
Point. Yeah. All right. Next story. Let's go. Come on.
What is it? Okay. What's the name of it?
It's got to be My Side of the Matter. There's only 2 left. So it's my.
That is true.
Yeah.
This is my most question mark story.
This was weird as shit.
It's just a guy who seems to be grandstanding, who's has an epic, almost mythological account of his somewhat sordid actual situation, right?
Yeah. So it's basically about this guy who married this young, they're all young. They're like 16, 17 maybe. And they get married and they go back to her, Marge is the girl that he marries. And they go back to her house, and she has these 2 like crazy, like demonic aunts who hate him from the beginning. They make him sleep outside on the porch. And it's his kind of chronicling of how their relationship develops. And ultimately they wind up in this huge fight where they're attempting to kill him with their grandparents' like mounted Civil War saber. And he's like standing on the piano, and he like runs up to the bedroom and barricades himself in. And that's kind of where the story ends.
Yeah.
And this one, I have to say, I did not really know what to make of.
Me either.
Yeah, same, except for like maybe just like a kind of funny way of describing someone's like epic account of their
Right.
actually pretty lame and sordid life.
And I think also this guy also kind of serves as like a prototype for some of these other characters where he probably is in the wrong in some things and in certain things that he's done, but he's the victim, he's the center of the story, and all these people just hate me. He's kind of like a preview of Walter in a way.
Yeah.
Weird fucking story.
Yeah. If anyone's a Truman Capote podcast,
Bring
come on
it
the
on.
show. Yeah.
There is like a Truman Capote YouTube guy that isn't great.
All right. Well, let's ignore him.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm
Um,
not naming you. I'm sorry. If you
all
listen.
right. Final story.
Yeah.
All right. It's a Tree of Night, the title story. Paul, what's it about?
I don't want to do it
Why?
because I don't remember very much at this moment in my life.
All right.
Is that okay?
I'll take a shot. So this is a story about a young woman, Kay, who's going back to college after, I believe, her uncle's funeral. And she sits down in a dining car in a train at the, this is like an overnight train ride. And there are this weird couple kind of sitting across from her.
Yeah.
This woman and basically this man who's sort of like not completely like not like a paraplegic, like immobile, but like oddly like immobile and like leaning at a weird angle, just kind of like sitting there doing nothing, and clearly has some kind of like physical ailment, right? They initially start talking to her. The woman like kind of tries to have some banter and eventually pressures her into getting a little tipsy on some gin. And the guy kind of becomes increasingly creepy and like looking at her, and the woman like grabs her wrist at one point and refuses to let her leave. It turns out that they're again a recurring kind of character trope, this kind of like traveling like grifter couple who do this show where the guy is like buried alive and it is risen as Lazarus.
Well, doesn't he go into like a storefront too for like a day and just sits there and doesn't eat and just like stares?
He's like a live mannequin.
He's like his own hype project, right? He's hyping up the later event.
And eventually they try to sell her this creepy, what is it, a pumpkin seed? It's not a pumpkin seed.
Matt got I don't know why.
It's funny. It's funny. It's just a funny couple to have to talk to.
Yeah. It's very eerie. It's a very eerie and creepy story. And I forget what kind of what kind of seed it is or what it is that he tries to sell her. It's like a love charm, right?
Yeah, it's not just like pumpkin seeds. It's
but it's
potion.
Potions like the class in Harry Potter.
And I think it is some kind of seed or something. I don't remember exactly what it is. Okay, here it is. Peach. It's a peach seed. And he starts playing with it in this like creepy, like vaguely sexual way, and like showing it to her. And turns out that they want her to buy it as a kind of like love charm. And she's like just freaked out, and she gets up and goes out onto the observation deck of the train in the cold, and kind of has this like flashback memory of this like spook story, this ghost story that her parents would tell her as a kid about this like wizard man who would come for her in the night and like break into her room and and so she's like reckoning with this childhood past and kind of having it all flood back to her, and the guy just kind of like shows up behind her and she's like terrified, but it's kind of implied, I think, that the guy's like ultimately harmless and just weird, and they're just kind of like grifters. And she goes back in and sits down and kind of like drifts off and falls asleep in this like weird, dreamy, like potentially gin-induced haze. The grifters steal her purse and then put a raincoat over her head, and that's the story.
Yeah.
And I think this one is one of the ones where most explicitly like memory and childhood trauma kind of come up. Not trauma specifically, we don't know exactly what happened, but like she's clearly like a person who is afraid in general. Like she's just like a kind of high-strung, fearful person, I think, Kay.
Yeah, and she's correct to be so, at least in like the context of the story, because she gets roped into this thing with these people,
Yes.
and they do con her. You know,
they do, right? But it's also like how much of our fear is like warranted, and how much of it is like imagined or manufactured, right? I feel like that's also like a balance that's happening here.
the confidence, man.
Yes. Well, right. We'll get to that in a couple weeks.
Also, fear is the mind killer.
Yeah.
Dune.
Dude.
Dune, fear is the mind killer.
But I mean, on a realistic note, I do think that like we haven't brought up the word neuroses yet, but that
right.
I feel like that's a good word to describe most of these stories. Actually, it's just like Capote's innate neuroses, maybe that he has, but it's how he
because he had a kind of a fucked up
sees
childhood.
people.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, I don't. Yeah,
I would say like it's
Freud.
that tension. It's that tension between like you not wanting to think the worst of people, while you yourself having been sold a false bill of goods and kind of gassed up and delusional in certain ways in your own perspective of like what's to be expected in the future for yourself, like what you can do, meeting these people who are also complicated, con artists, like, you know, people who are out with an angle to kind of dupe you and extract something from you, but for reasons that are valid and that are almost weirdly like dovetailing with your own problems. I think that's most importantly, right? Like people who are enmeshed in the same quandaries and in the same system that creates the questions that you're trying to answer. They're doing the same. They're trying to answer them themselves, and they're doing it at your expense.
Right.
And it's this like weird relationship between that is like what feels to me like a lot of the Capote stories.
And well, I would also add that this one specifically has like what I think is a pretty explicit class dimension, because on a few occasions this couple, they're like, oh, you must have a bunch of money, fancy rich college girl, like going off to college, and we're just these you know, trying to make our way out here in the world. And I think there's that tension that exists between these characters as well.
Yeah, people with ambitions that have a class dimension.
American dream.
Right. And then the small towns. And it's like,
Yep.
what are you doing? Getting big for your britches? You talking down to me, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
But then sometimes they are.
Yep.
That's the thing too, which I like. It's like, you know, sometimes they are. They're like, they're delusional too. They're just delusional on a societally accepted higher plane. But it doesn't matter. It's the same dupe. It's the same con being run on them.
Con Air.
By society.
Sure, Con Air, yeah.
Which we live in. All right.
We should do an episode on Con Air.
Nicolas Cage.
I would. All right. As predicted, this went long. I think.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Short stories are difficult because it's just like
nothing short about them.
Apologies to the short stories that got the short shrift here towards the end. But yeah, I think you get a sense of Capote's style here. You get a sense of some of the themes he's interested in.
Yeah, And just because we rushed through the last 4 doesn't mean. I mean, I really enjoyed this a lot.
We only rushed through the last 3. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think like, for instance, the Headless Hawk or whatever. It's like, I would say his power to evoke the feeling of experiencing the things we've been sort of brushing over is the strength of the, you know, the short story collection in general.
Is the strength of the storks.
I'm drunk like Truman Capote.
The headless stork. Yeah, exactly. All right. So I think the consensus was that despite it being everyone's favorite segment, no matter what anonymous, cowardly Instagram messengers say. Just kidding. We really appreciate
Cowardly.
it. Just kidding. You're not cowardly. We appreciate
Challenge
it.
to real fights in the real world.
That's right.
Instagram messengers.
That's right. Come get it back in blood, baby. Let's have this out.
Yeah.
But no, just kidding. We love you and appreciate you. You know who you are. We are going to skip by consensus the Harry Potter segment tonight because there are too many characters and we don't know very much about most of them or enough to put them in a Harry Potter house, probably. Most of them would probably be like Slytherin or Hufflepuff. Either they're...
Gabe wants to do a quick personal...
Just real quick. Like all of these characters are either like transparently self-interested in like a vulgar Slytherin way or like transparently just like down and out, like don't even want to leave the house and just have a normal one.
Slytherin.
Yeah. Which means we're skipping straight to the blockbuster segment, which is scores, dibs, not first.
Oh, well, that's just me.
Just you.
Fuck! Okay, here we go.
And we're also skipping the other
I did
segment.
have a few words. Okay, whatever. It's fine.
We can skip it. It's too long.
Yeah.
It's too long. Next episode we'll do it.
I'm gonna go ahead and give this a 3.7.
Oh shit! Really?
I had a good time reading these, man.
Nice.
That's sick. I didn't know. Like I've been looking at you this whole episode, looking at you, Matt.
Let me say,
tell by your face what was gonna happen.
How about this? It's a 3.65.
Fuck,
wow, dude. Whoa. That's
You
hard.
just wanted to slightly. You wanted to
I-
stab me with a little fucking tiny toothpick of a knife.
3.65.
Oh my
Fine.
god.
Fuck you, Paul.
Fuck. I
I
won't say it back to you because I love you. I'm not gonna say fuck you, Matt.
Wow. Trying to reverse psych me? Not gonna happen.
I enjoyed these. I think less than you two did.
Really?
I don't know. I don't really know what to make of it. Some of them felt like kind of like unfinished to me in a way. Like I did not love Miriam. I got to say, I wanted a little bit more out of it.
Wow.
And some of the other ones. And some of the symbolism, I think his writing, I like his writing a lot. And I think he's very evocative. And there's some passages like some passages that are just brilliant and turns of phrase that I think are brilliant. And the way he like weaves in and out of like dream and like arguably like not psychosis, but like mental kind of memory and stuff and reality and all of that. I really enjoyed. And I liked the kind of like magical realist the aspect of it, which is what I'm calling it. But like, and then some of the symbolism felt muddled. Like if we'd really got into the headless hawk thing, there's like 20 different symbols in that story of the hawk.
Yeah, true.
And the people on the backs and like the doctor and Mr. Destronelli and all this stuff. It's like, it felt like there was too much going on in some of these stories, too much and not enough simultaneously going on in some of these stories for me. So I'm at like a 2.87.
Oh shit. Wow. Okay. I
want to read
I'm
more Capote. I'll say that.
I'm like right around where Matt is actually. Like, I enjoyed reading this a lot. I'm a 3.56.
All right.
Nice. All right. Well, despite the spiteful scores being thrown around, spite scores here. That
wasn't a spite score. It was fun.
All right.
I thought that was just fun goof.
Oh, because
I'm
it was
actually
6'5" and then 5'6".
Yeah.
I get it.
No, actually,
I thought you just wanted to make it lower than Matt's.
No, I wanted to. I wanted to be 3 point. What did you say, Matt?
6'5".
Oh, I want to do 6'7". That's what I meant to do.
Got it. Okay, got
All
it.
right. Yeah.
It's a little bit more hurt.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for sticking with us this far, you beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah, you guys are
listeners.
great.
I'm sorry about that. We're
should we
sorry
try
about
and-
this episode.
Should we try and do the Capote's voice?
No.
Yes, I
No,
want to
I'm
hear
gonna
it.
Stop the recording if anyone starts that.
I want Matt to do the Philip Seymour Hoffman voice again.
Philip Seymour
actually.
Hoffman voice, I will condone.
Yeah.
I just feel like that's what he just sort of, he kind of talks like this.
Yeah, it's true. It is like Mike Tyson.
There it is. Yeah.
I wrote a bunch of short stories, and I feel like you guys didn't really give them proper, a sort of consideration.
All
Right, it's not bad. It's not bad,
that was
right?
Pretty good. That's
That's
actually
really
pretty
good,
good.
yeah.
That's actually
You
pretty
guys
good.
think I'm joking, some of you, and it's not true. It's exactly what
If
he
you
sounds
think
like.
that that's offensive or wrong, go listen to the YouTube videos. That's how he sounds.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
what he sounds like.
Kind
Like a Looney Tunes character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, listen. Come back next week for our anniversary spectacular.
Spectacular.
It's gonna be
Brah, brah.
It's
Yeah.
gonna be fireworks. It's gonna be epic. Subscribe to the YouTube. Subscribe to the Patreon. Instagram,
I'm gonna eat some cotton candy.
Twitter. Bring the cotton candy next week because it's gonna be epic.
Yeah.
And don't murder.
Yeah. If
It's the
whatever you
opposite
do,
of love. Don't murder.
it's the opposite of love. Ending life.
Yeah. It splits the soul like a Horcrux.
Oh,
Bye.
bye.